Welcome to Saltwater Aquarium Radio, the podcast that brings you saltwater aquarium information, tips, and stories to help you become more successful with your own salty venture. Now here's your host, Jeff Hesketh.
What is going on, guys? Jeff here for the Saltwater Aquarium Radio podcast, and today we're looking at a big hot plate of episode number 36. And today we're going to be talking with Seth from the ReefShine Guys, and we're going to talk about his time in the hobby as well as how the ReefShine Guys came to be. And if you don't know who the ReefShine Guys are and what they are all about, you're going to find out today. Let's kick the tires and light the fires. Episode number 36. All right. What is going on, guys? Jeff here, episode number 36. And today we have a very awesome show for you. We're actually going to be talking with the ReefShine Guys. But before we jump into that, some housekeeping that we need to do. Brand new microphone for the podcast. And it was a pretty large investment. And I have used the same microphone for years for my voiceovers on Mad Hatter's Reef, as well as here on the podcast. And finally made an upgrade and very excited about it. And I hope that you guys can hear the difference. And for those of you that are sticklers for good audio, I hope this mic does a trick for you. All right. So I also wanted to read a 5-star review that was left for us on iTunes, and it's by Rich, and it's titled A Gem of a Podcast. If you have any interest in the saltwater aquarium hobby, this is a must-do. Always good advice, great reviews. I hope he gets more interviews in the mix. Audio is a medium that is underserved in this hobby, and Jeff is a master storyteller, emotive, engaging, that keeps you listening. If you're new to the hobby or a salty sea dog, subscribe to this one. Rich, you are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for that 5-star review. It definitely means the world to me, and I appreciate your kind words. If at some point you have gotten some information from this podcast that's helped you with your reef tank, or if you just enjoyed this podcast, I have an ask for you. Whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, jump to that platform, that main page where you can see the logo, and leave an honest 5-star review for this podcast. It helps me out. It helps the show out. It helps other people find this podcast, and maybe, just maybe, we can help them too. I read every single one of them and appreciate the time that it takes to do that. So if you want to help the show out, jump over to the platform that you're listening to this podcast on and leave an honest 5-star review. Thank you so much. All right, guys, so now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into our interview with Seth from the ReefShine Guys. Seth, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me, and my name is Seth Swain of the ReefShine Guys. Been in the hobby for going on about 8 years now. Still an avid hobbyist. Founded the ReefShine Guys a few years ago. Me and Jacob Blankenship and Tim Arthur, we travel around all these shows and just basically have a good time at what we do. We sell coral shirts, koozies, and that's about it. You can find us at about any major show on the East Coast or Midwest.
How did you get started in the reef tank hobby?
I grew up with freshwater aquariums, like most of us, and I was always fascinated. We had a local fish store that always had salt water, and I was always fascinated by the colors, and always said that I was going to get one. And when I could afford it, I found one, a tank on Craigslist, 65 gallon, and I bought it. It's been the best $200 I ever spent.
So what was it that brought you into the hobby? Was it the fish, the corals, invertebrates?
I had no idea really about how bad the coral bug would hit me, but it was definitely the fish. but now the fish are just kind of a background to all the coral.
So you're saying that the fish got you in, but the coral have kind of kept you there?
Oh yeah, yeah. But I'm an invertebrate guy too. I like all the anemones. The snails and the hermit crabs fascinate me. Just about anything that is crazy looking. So all the nudibranchs.
I'd imagine that's where the Send Nudies shirt came from.
Oh yeah, yes sir.
That's an awesome shirt, by the way.
Thank you. I printed. I want to say I printed right at 200 of them. I have just a handful left. We debuted those at Aquashella Dallas, and I sold almost 200 shirts in a weekend.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's actually where I got to meet you, was Aquashella, and then we bumped into each other again down in Connecticut for the Keep On Reefing.
We had a good time in Dallas.
No.
Dallas was a heck of a show. We had a lot of fun at Keep On Reefing as well.
That Dallas show was unreal.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if your listeners have never experienced an Aquashella. It's unlike any other show going on right now. It's hard to even explain. It's so much more than just a coral, a reefing event. They've got freshwater stuff. They've got reptiles. They've got all the art. It's crazy and such a good time.
Rico had brought me over to your booth, and he actually gave me a little taste of what you guys had behind the table. But as far as items that you were selling at the show, was it just the T-shirts and the koozies?
Yeah, just the T-shirts and the koozies. We've got our own ReefShine Guy T-shirts. Plus, we came out with the Send Nudies, and I plan on doing special limited edition T-shirts here and there through the year. But we also partnered with I'mAReefer.com, and we offered those shirts as well. That was the first big show that we offered those at, and they were a big hit. Chris Klein owns that company, and we're really good friends with him. But yeah, the moonshine is just another hobby for us. We like to share it with people. We like to drink it, and we like to have other people drink with us. So, and it was an 18-hour drive down there. We usually always have a coral tank set up, but on the longer drives, anything over 12 hours, we usually don't bring any coral because it's just too stressful on the animals and ourselves trying to keep them alive through the weekend.
Where are you guys out of?
It's kind of funny. We are out of, each of us are from 3 different states. I'm from Kentucky. Jacob Blankenship is from Ohio, and Tim Arthur is from West Virginia, but we live within 15 minutes of each other. We live right where all 3 states meet. It's called the tri-state area. So I live in eastern Kentucky. Jacob lives in southern Ohio, and Tim lives in southeast West Virginia.
So something that I wanted to jump back to, you had mentioned that am I correct in saying that you only have one reef tank, the 8 years that you've been in the hobby?
Oh, no, Lord, no. That was just the one that started them all. I actually just downgraded at my house right now. I did have up a 4 foot by 4 foot by 1 foot lagoon with the center overflow, but I'm just not home enough to take care of that big of a tank properly right now. So I just set up a 25 Innovative Marine Lagoon, and you guys are going to start seeing that on social media real soon.
So as far as your tank that you have currently, you're downsizing, that's actually something that I'm kind of in the process of myself. My 220 gallon, I've been shutting that down. I've been working on a Water Box 70.3. Have you found that tank is serving you a little bit better currently than?
Yeah. Yes. Tremendously better. I am going to go bigger. My eye set up on a water box as well, but I just had the Innovative Marine tank already. I have 3 80-gallon frag tanks, a 60-gallon frag tank. I've got the 25-gallon lagoon. I've got a 10-gallon Innovative Marine 10-gallon Nuvo that is laying underneath my bed that I'd like to do an anemone clownfish tank again one day. But between the three of us, we have way too many tanks. Way too many.
Yeah, the hobby tends to bring that out in people.
Yeah. Yeah. Jacob has a Marine Land 200-gallon deep dimension tank. That is basically our biggest farm tank as of right now. The 4-foot by 4-foot lagoon that was at my house was supposed to be a sort of a grow out tank for some colonies, but it never really, I never really got it right. Once it was set up, it was up for about a year and a half. I was never really happy with it. I got some major aptasia problems in it and didn't think I was ever going to get rid of those. And once I finally did, I was just sick of the tank. So it went, and we're on to new things.
What did you do to get rid of the aptasia?
Bergies. Bergia nudibranchs. I ordered about 15 of them, and I had so many. I'd never seen a tank so infested with aptasias or seen aptasias spread as fast as they did in this tank. They were everywhere. They were covering 100%. I lost thousands of dollars worth of coral, and I tried butterfly fish. I tried filefish. I tried everything, and nothing would get it. And I finally got the Bergia nudibranchs, and I even give up on them because it was probably 2 to 3 months before I even started to see. I thought that they'd all died out. I'd actually 2 or 3 months after putting them in the tank, I chalked it up, and I was getting ready to shut it down and bleach the tank. And I started to raise up some frag disc, and the second or third one that I raised up and I was throwing them in a bucket, I just happened to notice that there was a bunch of egg spirals on the bottom of it, so I started checking more and more. I probably seen 200 to 300 Bergia nudibranchs in the tank, and after that, I just slowly seen the aptasia go away, and within 2 or 3 months, there was zero aptasia in my system.
That's really awesome. I'm surprised you didn't see any success with the copper banded.
No, I've tried actually. I've never really had very good luck with the copper banded copper banded butterfly. I tried actually 3 of them. There was a tank in the past about 5 or 6 years ago that I got one to actually eat some aptasia, but I went through 3 and I couldn't get them to do anything in this tank, and all 3 of them died within just a few weeks, which that's a hard fish to get acclimated anyway. So
pretty convenient for me to have this conversation right now, because that 220 gallon that I'm talking about shutting down, I actually have quite a aptasia problem going on in there currently.
Get you some Bergia nudibranchs, and it's not going to be. I actually made a good bit of money off of them. It was a very good investment. But this tank was not set up like a reef. It had no live rock in the actual tank itself. That was all underneath in the sump. So, and no live sand. So I just had a bunch of tiles in there. So I was able to get those Bergias and thin them out and sell them as they were working on my tank, and I made a lot of money doing it.
That's awesome. So you've kind of touched on having livestock, and is a goal of the ReefShine Guys to eventually sell coral?
Oh, we do sell coral. We don't like to. We're not flying with coral or anything. We drive to all the shows that we go to so far. We're not going to be great big. We're not going to be Todd cherry corals or anything like that. Everything that we do sell is stuff that we grow in our home aquariums. It's all aquaculture, and we are collectors and just basically try to share the wealth.
I like that. That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the ReefShine Guys. How and why did you guys kind of come together?
We've been friends. We actually started up a local reef club that for a lot of different reasons, never really took off. There, where we live, there's not a whole lot of hobby base, um, and it's. I was actually the president of the club, and if you asked me to do it again, I would tell you, heck no, because one of the hardest things to do is to get a group of people together and keep them all happy. So it wasn't one of the funnest things I ever did. It was a lot of hard work, and it didn't work out. But we made friends doing that. And we go back to 2015, MACNA was held in Washington, D.C., and we told each other that if we ever wanted to go to a show of that uh, caliber, that we would never see one closer, not in a long time. So we all loaded up and went to Magna in D.C., and we heard that after the show floor closed, that it was one big party, that there was a dinner and a cocktail hour and stuff like that. And us being from Appalachia, we were like, okay, let's bring some moonshine. I bet nobody's ever seen any moonshine. So we brought a little bit of our moonshine up there with us, and we made a whole lot of friends. And that's where kind of the spark came from, that, hey, we could probably go to more of these shows and try to market it and make enough money to where we don't have any money coming out of our pocket. And so we started doing the Reefapaloozas, and so now we're traveling. We hit about, I would say, anywhere from 10 to 15 shows a year.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So basically all we did was, we were like, we want to have a good time. People want to have a good time. People like us. So we basically just made a brand out of thin air, and that's what we do. We just show up to these shows and have a good time, and hope that everybody with us is having a good time as well.
So when I saw you at the Keep On Reefing Expo in Connecticut, you had a mobile carbon dosing machine. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that one was pretty fun. Logan from Reef Breeders got in touch with us and was like, came at us with this idea, and it is strictly just a novelty item. There was some backlash on it on a page on Facebook. People, I guess somebody put a write up on Reef to Reef saying that it was an actual piece of reefing equipment, which it, in fact is not. It does nothing but pours moonshine into a shot glass. But the venue didn't like that very well, as we weren't selling any alcohol at the show. They didn't want us giving it out, I guess, because they thought we were competing with the bar at the venue. So we had to get rid of that really fast. But it is really neat to look at. It looks really fancy. It is kind of fancy. I mean, it does use the Reef Breeders Wi-Fi doser in it. So it's all Wi-Fi. We pour shots from our phone and give them to the people.
So I don't know if it was Tim, but I saw a video, I think it was on your Facebook page, and he had it set up on the app where he would just hit a button and it would basically mix. Does it mix the cocktail?
No, it actually just kind of sort of, yeah. We were doing, it was basically the same. For a little while, Neptune was making margaritas at the show, so it was basically doing the exact same thing as that. So I mean, we didn't come up with the idea or anything, but at the same time, we just kind of took it and modified it to fit our brand and did it. Mission Reef Acrylic out of North Carolina. I'll think of the town he lives in in just a second, but he's the one that made it for us. He does all kinds of custom acrylic work, and he is awesome. He actually made, I don't know if you've ever seen, but we actually have a frag rack that looks exactly like our logo, and it's the shape and has the coral and everything. And he made that for us as well.
I thought that was Building an Obsession that did that for you guys.
Building Obsession does all of our tanks and all of our coral transports. We have one-off frag rack that is actually shaped and looks. I'll have to send you a picture of it. Looks just like our logo, and it is pretty awesome. So we're small time. We don't have. We're not a big corporation or anything like that. Some people have asked us how big we are. We're just three hobbyists, just like everyone else. We just have ideas and we like to share them with people. And but we also like to do business with other small companies like ourselves. So we don't. This industry is very cliquey. You know, people are friends with certain people, but not friends with other people because I mean, it's a small industry. But we try to stay friends with everybody. We try to spread the love around as far as we can. If you have a product that we like, just because we buy other stuff in the same category from someone else doesn't mean we won't buy from you. So we have a couple different guys that do really good acrylic work.
I couldn't agree with you more on the clicky aspect of that because I actually, my business that I've been working from the ground up is Mystery Reef Box, where it's a subscription box, and every month you get different items sent to the subscribers. And I have found with working or trying to work with different companies that they are very particular, and like they'll say that they're not going to work with this type of company, but then they're working with another version of it, and I definitely would agree with you on that.
Exactly, and I mean, I'm not saying bad about the people, those people, but that's just not the way we are. We try to be friends with everybody. I'm not saying that we get along with everyone in the industry, but we try to very hard. And when we first came out, we were approached several different times about sponsorships and stuff like that. And we just decided that it wasn't really worth the headache to do anything like that because we don't want to be biased towards anyone or anything or any product. So I don't believe that you'll ever see the ReefShine Guys endorse anything that we don't like, for the sole fact that we use the products and that's it.
That is absolutely awesome. Definitely appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
What is the next stop for the ReefShine Guys?
We are actually headed to Akron, Ohio to Tidal Gardens I'm not even 100% sure what it is. I know that he will probably have some good sales going at the greenhouse. He's got a brand new facility that he just built. It's not 100% done yet, but I think it's for people to come in and check that out because it's not usually open to the public. But there will be food. I believe it's $25 a ticket to get in, but the first 100 people get a grab bag, and there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. And if you've never been to Tidal Gardens, it is a coral greenhouse in northern Ohio that has some of the harshest winters that I've seen in my area. I'm not like you, Jeff. I'm not from Maine, so I'm sure it's a lot worse than you have. But to have an actual coral greenhouse, it just blows my mind because it can get down to -5 here in the wintertime, and we have 3-4 foot of snow on the ground. So it's very neat. It's a very neat thing.
Yeah, I've had Than on the podcast in the past. He's a really good guy. I think it's a barbecue type setting, and he opens his doors, and they basically can hang out and have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we're real excited. We've had some people ask us if coral is going to be for sale. I'm not 100% for sure about any of that, but I would say that since he's open to the public that day, he probably will be selling his coral. So
he's going to pay for that new building.
Oh yeah, and it's nice too. It's very nice. We were able to get up there in February after the Lear show that happens right down the road in Strongsville, and it is crazy nice. They had just got all of the 80/20 in to build all the stands with. It was all pre-cut and laying on the floor. It was pretty impressive.
I wish I could make it. I had talked to Rico about it, but I'm not going to be able to make it due to the day job and the kids and all that. But hope you have a good time.
Oh, yes. When's your next show that you're going to be coming to?
I think the next show I'm going to do will probably be Rap Orlando again.
Okay.
I think I'm going to try to do the New York show as well next year. And then maybe some stuff in between. I'm not 100% certain on Mackinac yet. Still working the details out on that. But I want to do more shows. Definitely want to check out. I'd like to go to Aquashella Chicago because I've never been to Chicago.
The Chicago is fun. That is really close. So from Tidal Gardens, the next show that we do will be Mackinac, but we're just attending as attendees. We're part of the Coraleros, which is basically like just a group of reefing friends with the same goals and want to see the same in the industry. Not a whole lot of the arguing, the bickering between the different companies. So I will actually be working their booth at Mackinac. And then after Mackinac, we're headed to Philly for Philly Splash on the 14th. And then Aquashella Chicago. But Jeff, if you can make it, you should come out, buddy, because Chicago is a fun town.
George had asked me to go to the first Aquashella, but again, I couldn't work out the scheduling. And not even knowing anything about Aquashella, I just wanted to go because of the location. Because I've been to Texas, I've been to Florida, I've been a lot of places in between, but I've never been to Chicago. And hopefully, at some point, I can get out there.
Oh yeah. Well, Chicago, to me, last year when I went to Aquashella was the first time I went to Chicago. And the show actually takes place about 15 to 20 minutes north of downtown Chicago in a town called Niles. And when we got there, there is a Polish restaurant inside of the venue. And I started to notice that all the restaurants and bars that we were hitting up in there in Niles all had German and Polish beers for the most part. So I started to wonder. So I asked him, I said, why is all these beers Polish and German? And so basically, Niles is 95% Polish people, and I never even heard of that. Besides New York City having neighborhoods that are, predominantly one section of people, outside of New York City, I never heard of that. So everyone that lives in Niles is Polish, and so if you like Polish food and German stuff, Aquashella Chicago is a pretty cool show because you'll see a lot of that.
So what does the future hold for the ReefShine Guys?
Jeff, I hope that we're just here and we're able to travel and meet as many fellow hobbyists as we can, and I hopefully years to come.
Hey, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Appreciate the time that you took out to talk with us. Where can people find out more about you and the ReefShine Guys?
We have most of our stuff is social media based, so you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, both under ReefShine Guys. And we also have a website, www.reefshineguys.com. You can find our gear there, our shirts, our hats, stickers, special stuff. We're trying to constantly come out with new stuff, so nothing gets stale.
Awesome, man. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
All right, folks, we have come to that point in the podcast where we answer the question of the week. Now, this week's question of the week is brought to you by my company, Mystery Reef Box. Mystery Reef Box is a subscription box filled with items that are going to help you keep and maintain a successful reef tank. So if you want to check out Mystery Reef Box, it's pretty much like getting a little box of Christmas every single month. Jump over to MrReefBox.com and sign up today. Oh yeah, one more thing on the Mr. Reef Box. There is a discount code in the show notes that's going to save you $5 off your very first box. So make sure you check it out. This week's question of the week comes from Alberto, and Alberto says, Jeff, love the podcast. I have a question which I think is something that you are very familiar with. I have 2 tanks. One is a 40-gallon. The other one is a 125-gallon. Both of them are keeping African cichlids. Now, I want to make the attempt to start a saltwater tank, but I'm not sure which tank I should use. Should I use the 40-gallon or the 125-gallon? Let me know what you think. Appreciate the podcast, and keep on rocking. Alberto, first things first, thank you so much for reaching out and submitting a question to the podcast to have answered here on the show. Your question reminds me of how I got into the hobby. For me personally, I had many, many tanks. And the reason for that is because I didn't always do my research when I was buying African cichlids. I would say, ooh, I like that one. I'd buy it and bring it home. And I had a 55-gallon. That was my big tank at the time. And I had many like 20-gallon tanks throughout the house. And what would end up happening is I would buy these fish, put them in the tank, find out that they're not working with the fish that I already had established in the tank. I'd take them out and put them in another tank because I wanted the fish. So I would end up with, 20-gallon tanks throughout the house and African cichlids everywhere. Eventually decided to start a saltwater tank, and I took my 55-gallon, shut it down, and donated all my fish to the local fish store and started with a saltwater tank. Now, I took my biggest tank that I possibly could and started with that, and it lasted me a year or two, and then I decided it was time for me to upgrade again. Now, to answer your question, I'm not going to suggest you take your biggest tank that you have and turn that into a saltwater tank. What I want you to do, and I have a video on this very subject, is start looking at fish. Look at the fish that you potentially want to keep and do research on them and figure out what is the best environment for the fish that you would like to keep on your fish wish list. And if it's tangs that you tend to be drawn to, you're probably going to need that larger tank. If you find that you're more into smaller fish that are very sight orientated, then that 40-gallon is going to work out perfectly for you. So that's my answer for you. Do research, study your fish, find out the requirements for that fish, and then from there, whatever fish that you find yourself attracted to, that requirement for those fish are going to tell you what size tank you need to have. Alberto, thank you so much for asking this week's question of the week. And for all you listeners out there, if you want to submit a question to be answered here on the podcast, jump over to saltwateraquariumradio.com, and right in the top menu bar, it says podcast Q&A. Click on that button, fill out that short form, and you may have your question featured right here on the podcast. So that's my take on Roberto's question for tank size and what tank you should start with. Now, when I was in the interview with Seth from ReefShine Guys, I asked him this same exact question, and his response was nothing short of what I would expect from Seth. So if you want to check out Seth's response to this question, down in the show notes, there's this link called Patreon Supporter. Click on that link, and that's going to bring you to Patreon, where you can select your level of support. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you access to a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff with the Saltwater Aquarium Radio podcast, and it's going to give you Seth's response to this question. And while we're talking about it, I want to take a second to thank Jeff Huey for being the newest of the Patreon supporters. You're awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so for those of you that have stuck it out this far into the podcast, I now have a super secret message just for you, since you're one of the hardcore listeners of this podcast. I recently designed some shirts for the listeners of this podcast, and they're going to be available. Well, eventually I'm going to get them printed, but right now they're available for pre-sale at Mystery Reef Box Shop, which if you go to the show notes, there's going to be a link that just says special announcement. That will bring you to the shop where you can take a look at those shirts, and I am going to be doing a number of different things with these shirts. Eventually, we're going to do a breast cancer awareness shirt. We're also going to do a No Shave November shirt and a couple other things that we got in the works. So if you're interested in picking up a Saltwater Aquarium Radio podcast t-shirt, jump to the link in the show notes that says special announcement, and I'll bring you over to Mr. Reef Box, where you can take a look at those and possibly get your own super salty t-shirt. That's right. They're already salty. Super salty. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Saltwater Aquarium Radio Podcast, episode number 36. And a special thank you to Seth of the ReefShine Guys. Don't forget to stop by their website, reefshineguys.com, and they're on the socials. There'll be links to those in the show notes if you want to check them out. And don't forget, the show notes are available at saltwateraquariumradio.com. That's the only place that you're going to be able to see the videos that are attached to the show notes. Whatever reason, they don't work anywhere else. That's going to do it for today. I want to thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you next time right here on the Saltwater Aquarium Radio Podcast.
You've been listening to the SAR Podcast. To find out more about today's topics featured on the show, as well as more episodes of the SAR Podcast, visit www.saltwateraquariumradio.com.